It's important for all of us to be persistent in our efforts to make sure we're doing everything we possibly can to address worker safety. Because the work to make sure that every worker comes home safe each day will never really be complete.
Today is all about 173 workers who lost their lives last year. Obviously, that is tragic, but more can be done. We always believe more can be done. We're in the business of injury and disease prevention at WorkSafeBC, so what we try to do is to work with employers, labor unions, workers themselves, health and safety associations to all be focused on driving injuries and workplace deaths down as low as they possibly can be. We have a number of strategies that we employ, of course, that we're part of and that we carry out there in the workplace. Our fundamental piece from the prevention services side of things at WorkSafe is enforcement, followed through with the inspectional work that we do. I think that a number over the years, if you look at the rate of injuries, if you look at the rate of deaths in the workplace, they've all come down, and it's due to a number of factors. There's been considerable awareness out there today, more so than years gone by, with respect to responsibilities in the workplace. All parties taking action and taking safety more seriously, trying to put safety on par with production and quality work that's out there being done. So I think just that alone. Technology has also changed. Technology in fall protection systems, especially in construction and those types of things, has dramatically played a role in reducing injuries and death in the workplace. But again, one death is one too many. We need to continue to focus that way.
Construction is a dangerous endeavor, and you need to have really good workplace rules for that industry and good safety. And so the BC Building Trades is front and center in that fight. So of course you have falling, which is always an injury, and falling against things, which is another injury, and things falling on people and those kinds of things, and the operation of heavy machinery, which people have to be very well trained for, because that machinery can be very dangerous. So cranes, for example, and loaders and all those kinds of things, they're very dangerous, and people need to be extremely well trained to operate machinery. So those are the kinds of things that we worry about in the construction industry, and the BC Building Trades is front and center in that work.
Falls from elevation still is number one, whether it be in construction or other industries, but predominantly construction. We have workers falling off of rooftops, and if they're not killed, it's a serious injury. It's a life-changing injury. They end up in a wheelchair or without the use of a limb or whatever the case may be. So we really have to focus on those falls from elevation.
Last year was a bad year for workers in this province. 173 of them died. 98 died as a result of an occupational disease, and 77 of those resulted from being exposed to asbestos. Many of those exposures happened years ago. Asbestos has been banned for 25 years. However, its deadly and long latency develops into a disease and takes its time doing so. And we're seeing the effects of those diseases on workers today and on retirees.
Asbestos continues to be a challenge for employers and ourselves in this province. We all know that asbestos does kill. We know what the hazards related to asbestos are. That's very well defined. The diseases of asbestosis and mesothelioma, well defined. What is happening today, I like to believe the gross exposures to asbestos are not occurring like they had in years gone by in the pulp mills, the refineries, the heavier industry like shipbuilding. Those gross exposures aren't happening, but what is happening is in the building demolition side of work. We have today contractors demolishing buildings, demolishing houses, single-family homes that contain asbestos, and it's those insidious low-level exposures that workers are still being exposed to. We have a team of officers that are focused on asbestos and asbestos alone in residential construction. They try to get to all of those demolitions to ensure that asbestos is abated and removed prior to the demolition, but that's not always the case. And so we see that today workers are being exposed to asbestos from those types of situations. We can eradicate asbestos disease by preventing exposure, and that's what our aim is.
It's also a time for each of us to reflect on how we can collaborate as employers, as workers, as labor, and as business leaders to prevent workplace accidents and foster a culture of workplace safety at every minute of the day. The fact remains, workplace accidents are preventable. We all need to take steps and precautions to avoid accidents on the job. Our values are aligned on this matter, and each day we must dedicate ourselves to ensuring that we are preventing injuries and further deaths on the job.
The BC Fed can put pressure on government for good rules and to the WCB for enforcement of those rules. We have seen some improvements in that area. We're not sure that the implementation and enforcement will be there. But we had a case, for example, where there was a number of employers putting workers in danger with asbestos, and they defied the rules over and over again, and really there was eventually the guy was jailed for contempt of court, but never for breaking the WCB rules. So this new legislation that the government's brought in will allow them to shut down employers, but we'll be waiting to see whether that's properly enforced. We haven't really seen that yet, and we expect it. I think getting the word out, being vocal about it, working with families, which we have done in many cases when there's been serious injuries, continuing to put pressure on WCB and the government to put good rules in place and enforce those rules.